Disclaimer, this video is educational and informative in nature. Do not contact anyone shown in this video. Also, this video is discussing steroids. Do not use steroids. This is entirely for educational and entertainment purposes only.
All right, gang, we're going to go through one of the most insane steroid cycles that I've ever seen and the outcomes that most people are likely going to experience on steroids, which is not talked about very often. We have a success bias that we live in on a day-to-day basis consuming social media content. The people who have the great physiques are usually the ones that are going to go viral and tell you how great it is. But what you don't see is the people who get the most lackluster results. And if you're wondering why I look like a 12-year-old with a blanket wrapped around me, it's chilly, okay? Chilly. I live on the panhandle of Florida. It's usually warm. It's not warm this week. It's like 65 degrees, which is convenient compared to most of you. I won't lie. But for me, it's a little chilly. The reason I wanted to talk about this one in particular is because it is akin to a lot of the videos that we discuss, a lot of the horror stories of abusing steroids. And at first, I'll be honest with you, I was going through this post and I for sure thought it was just rage bait. I thought this was a joke and that this guy was just trying to post something to be, viral on Reddit or something like that. As I went through it and then read his comments replying to other comments, I realized this is not a joke. This is one of the most extreme cases of abuse of steroids that I have ever seen, especially for an intro cycle, let alone an intro lifter altogether. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Coach Kolton. We make content like this all day long. Make sure you subscribe. And if you don't, well, that's your choice. So he goes on to post, "Sup nerds, been lifting for about 6 months now. On gear with the above stated compounds. Been getting crazy mirrors." Myers? What is this? Look it up. What is this? A stretch of swampy, boggy ground. I'm like maybe too out of the age range to understand what that... I'm thinking this is when people glare at you or like glance at you. We'll go with it. But the trend did give me wicked acne pic related. I've gained a solid 10 pounds and have started leaning out. The D-ball was making my tits feel weird.
Object to the tits!
Good.
Do you feel it?
No.
So I cut back. The lifts are going crazy. Almost a 225 bench now. That's why I thought it was a joke initially. I thought this was a joke because he said a 225 bench, which is like, I think I got that when I was like 19. Like not really lifting very seriously, but we progress. So he gives the dosages to his compounds and the selection of compounds. He was running testosterone at 750 milligrams. And keep in mind, this is his first ever exposure to steroids. Per week, he's run 250 milligrams of Trent Ace per week. He's run 200 milligrams of Equipoise per week, and then 30 milligrams of D-ball daily. And as you can see, the acne development is absolutely diabolical here. This guy's back looks like there's a fleet of mini stormtroopers in the thousands and they were all blasting his back with laser blasters, and like he ended up like this. He has this very odd pose. Like I would be too embarrassed to post something like this, but we're here for science.
Yes, science!
He posted this very clearly developing gynecomastia, very clearly. And again, not really developing a notable physique whatsoever, but he is getting gyno. He's developing gyno, which is notable, at least.
Mama.
And I genuinely can't determine which is the before or after picture. I have an idea that it's probably the left image here, but the right image isn't far off when we're talking about results from a massive steroid cycle. I mean, to get this kind of result from well over a gram of total androgen exposure, it's pretty embarrassing. Genuinely, and I don't mean this lightly, this is the kind of result that one could achieve through a year of training and solid ass dieting. In all reality, take your creatine, all right, 5 to 10 grams a day, eat your protein, eat roughly 4 to 5 times a day, and train your ass off. And you've probably got similar results to this. Or you could say, fuck it and just blast over a gram of total androgens and have off with ye. So let's first talk about the cycle selection here. Testosterone, 750 milligrams. That's ridiculous, all right? Standardized TRT, somewhere around 100 to 125, maybe 150 milligrams if you're pushing it. This is far, far, far exceeding that in a total dose of testosterone. The outcome of that, obviously, is going to be some gains. You get androgen receptor receptor activation, which leads to lean mass accrual. Great, but not so great in terms of off-targeted side effects. For instance, if estrogen is not managed, it will cause problems like gynecomastia development, the development and growth of male breast tissue. Why does this happen? Well, testosterone is cleaved up by aromatase, an enzyme, which makes it into estradiol. Estradiol binds to estrogen receptors and initiates estrogenic activity. And essentially that looks like a lot of things, but mainly breast tissue development in males, which you can very clearly see him developing here. For most people, starting out at this dose is just dumb because you don't know how you respond to it. Aromatase activity is very genetically determined. Some people have very high aromatase activity. Some people have very low aromatase activity. Your body fat, in fact, produces aromatase. And so the higher body fat that you have, generally, the more estrogen that you will convert. The lower the body fat that you have, the less estrogen that you'll convert. So the general good practice, if you want to call it that, would be to start at a lower dose to assess your response to these certain pharmaceuticals. In this instance, starting at 200 milligrams of testosterone, waiting 4 to 5 weeks, assessing what your estrogen is at by getting an estradiol test, like the laboratory marker, but not just that. You need the liquid chromatography mass spectrometry test, which is you need an ultra sensitive assay to determine where your estrogen is at. This is going to give you a very big cue into what am I able to tolerate in terms of a total testosterone dosage. This guy very likely would have found out that he was not able to tolerate 750 milligrams of total testosterone. If you are somebody who does tolerate that, then you can titrate up by 50 milligrams or so and continue to assess your response. But in this case, he just shotgunned it and went for 750 per week.
And I have a shotgun. Let me prove it.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Then throwing Tren-Ace. I mean, this is, I don't even need to explain this, guys. You know what Tren is. It is the premier steroid that most people kind of find virality with and talk about. Destructive, just wildly destructive.
These kids that want to do Tren,
Bro, stop with the trend. I
these
just want that
kids
to
are
stop.
brave. It is liver toxic.
It's like the worst thing.
It's like the worst thing. They see the reward, but they don't see I take this, and you know why they cough, right? It's because they have to put so much benzyl alcohol in that shit to keep it stable. The risk versus reward, I don't know, man.
We talked about neurologically how it's probably the worst selection of drugs to choose. We've talked about cardiovascularly, how it's one of the worst selection of drugs to choose from. It is very, very clearly not a compound that is worth putting in any cycle unless you're a professional bodybuilder. And I genuinely believe that. Unless you're stepping on stage to compete at a decently high level, it's probably not worth you using at the end of the day. And if you do use it, I genuinely do believe that its best practice would be at 5 to 10 milligrams a day, not 250 milligrams a week. But in this post, I mean, we have a guy who's doing well over 5 milligrams, which would be 35 milligrams a week. And we're talking basically 40 to 50 milligrams a day. Man, it's rough, dude. This is for a first cycle, you have no idea your response to androgens emotionally. You don't have an idea of your response to androgens physically, but you're just blasting all of the variety of compounds, so you have no idea which one's causing you the problem. You're basically grabbing a handful of darts and you're throwing them all at the dartboard. And you're like, I hope one hits the bullseye. And then 8 of them fall off the dartboard. He's taking equipoise, which is a testosterone derivative. It's a synthetic steroid, same as Trenbolone, but it's derived from the carbon molecule of testosterone. And so, I mean, it's kind of net neutral here. I don't know why he put this in. Maybe he's using it for estrogen management. There's, this sort of anti-estrogenic effect of equipoise that some people tend to experience. Again, hyper inter-individual. I don't tend to experience this, and I have obviously used to run steroids, so I kind of know that through my own blood work and regime that I used to do. But some people do to a large degree. Again, you wouldn't know this, you'd have to test. And with this being the first cycle, we're just hoping for the best here. And then the most diabolical, 30 milligrams of D-bol a day. The problem with D-bol is it is wildly estrogenic, and it doesn't just convert into estradiol. It's also a testosterone derivative, by the way, but it converts into methyl estradiol. And this is wildly hard to control or manage on cycle. And so you can really have a lot of instances where there's this runaway gyno symptom and you can't control control it, unless you have like a SERM, a selective estrogen receptor modulator, and in which that case you could control it. But viably, D-bol is not genuinely a good option for 95% of people. 5% of the steroid users out there who do use it could justify it for, powerlifting or increasing cross-sectional area momentarily through water retention, strength sports basically. But in reality, D-bol is probably one of those things that should just get thrown in the garbage for most people because we have better compounds to use. Arguably, this guy doesn't even need any of this, to be fair. To explain this, because I think it's so important to nail this one in the coffin, due to D-bol's volatility of its use, it's just a not great compound to select. Methyl estradiol, 17-alpha methyl estradiol, is produced from the aromatization of D-bol, Dianabol. You've heard of this drug before, surely. Comparably to typical estradiol, which is your body's natural form, it's called E2, maybe you might see this as, or just colloquially, you can call it estrogen. It is very stubborn. It's hard to get rid of. It's pesky as a metabolite. Because it's so unlike the actual form of estrogen in our body, it's much more difficult to get rid of it or manage it. And so when I say you can have this sort of like runaway train effect, you can start taking D-bol and you can aromatize fairly a little amount of it into methyl estradiol, but over time it builds up, and because it's very poorly metabolized by your body, it sticks around and you end up with symptoms like gyno in, one morning out of the day, and you're like, wow, my nipples are really sensitive. And if you don't take care of it, it runs away on you. You start to develop breast tissue. Once that breast tissue is calcified, contrary to what many people think, you cannot reverse breast tissue development. You absolutely cannot. It's like if I have this is a poor example, but if I have a mole develop or something like that, right? I can't just neutralize that mole by taking a compound that would block the receptor site or something like that. I would need to remove the mole surgically. Tissue that has been developed is virtually impossible to atrophy. And in this case, you can't just get rid of breast tissue through post-management of it. It needs to be preemptive. It needs to be something where you're taking care of it before it ever happens. Or just don't take D-bol. At the end of the day, it's that simple. But going into the comments, it is pretty diabolical. This guy comments, "My guy, your tits are not supposed to look like radio antennas." Seriously, I hope you start using Accutane. How are you blasting Trene and not hitting past a 225 bench yet? LOL. And he says, "My tits are fine. They got sensitive, so I added Adex. Let me tell you right away, they're not fine. You have gyno." And I used Accutane, which is also just a terrible idea. To briefly explain, any sort of 17 alkylated steroid like D-bol is very hepatotoxic. It's very taxing to any sort of liver function. But Accutane is wildly hepatotoxic. So stacking those two things on top of each other and running them simultaneously at God knows what dose is just asking for hepatosteatosis, fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's a wreck. It is an absolute train wreck. And again, this is this guy's first exposure to compounds, and he's become a walking pharmacy, taking Accutane, he's taking Arimidex, he's taking 4 different steroidal compounds. I mean, it's through the roof. He says, "Why train for strength and explode my joints benching when I'm trying just to get big? It makes no sense, and you're silly if you even care about lifts in bodybuilding." Yeah, let's just pretend like the mechanism to hypertrophy isn't in part tied to mechanical tension, which means that increased load provides more mechanical tension, and over time you would hope to increase load as to provide more stimulus for hypertrophy. This guy says, "Taking gear to look and perform as a natty, LMFAO. Plus, the back knee is telling you to fucking stop." Second comment here says, "Normally I downvote this kind of comment like this because most people who take gear look like natties. You wouldn't believe how many chubby 45-year-old men are on low-dose cycles just to keep themselves from going into a morbidly obese category," which I do agree with. Most men, I'd say 1 out of 3 men in your gym right now are taking steroids. Depending on what gym you're at, that might be a far higher ratio. He says, "The back knee is cleared up after I blasted myself with Accutane, but yeah, the scarring will take surgery, but it's not a big deal." Surgery is a pretty big deal, bro, this guy says. When your goal is to make money off of your physique like I am, then it's not a big deal. You have to make sacrifices. It doesn't happen overnight. This is part of the process. Wild take for somebody whose first cycle looks like this, who seemingly is trying to make it an overnight process. And a very good evaluation by a Redditor, "Dude, you're not that guy. I'm sorry. There's millions of other young kids with better physiques that are even naturally more talented that'll make money. I think you need a reality check rather than doing this stupid stuff." I entirely agree with. It is a genetic genetic pool at the end of the day. And some people have the proclivity to gain muscle on a uncapped scale. It's truly insane. Your physically enhanced potential by androgenic steroids, anabolic androgenic steroids, is sometimes less than what someone's ceiling is naturally. Genetics plays such a large role in the selection of, again, the success bias we see on the internet, the selection of good and valuable physiques, we'll say, in terms of like monetary value. You blasting steroids to beat that sort of limit, whatever it might be, is not the answer. You're just never going to be that. And that's unfortunate to say. You can be the best version of yourself, but don't chase this rabbit of I'm going to be the best physique and it's going to make me a ton of money, because ultimately it's probably not going to happen. And you're chasing something that's quite elusive. He says everyone has to start somewhere. And guess what? Those younger kids just started year before me. I did. I'll catch up. You're just coping with the fact that this is what it takes. This is not what it takes, everybody. I promise you that. He goes on to say, none of you haters will post body, so I'm just going to assume that you all have DYEL. I don't actually know what that means again. Maybe I'm showing my lack of intelligence here. Physiques, and will never understand the commitment it takes to make it. I'm going to make it, so get over it. In a year, I'll look really back, RY back. I don't know what that means. And you'll still be benching less. Dude, at a 15-year-old age, I was benching a moderate amount as you. At 19, I was surpassing it. This is crazy. That's natural, by the way. And unfortunately, that's the only post the guy ever made. That was it. This was the only one we ever got from him. So to follow up with this, I don't know what the guy looks like. I don't know where he's at, if he's still running steroids, if he's healthy, or if he ever did reach that transformation that he was talking about getting to make money with his physique. And you can clearly see the kind of delusion that people like this face when they start taking steroids, because often once you're in so far, you don't want to, admit that this has been all a mistake and the commitment so far has been worth virtually nothing. But it is the reality that a lot of people need to face, and you will see so often. We actually just made a video about several young guys starting steroids and then getting no payback from it, but talking like it was the most worthwhile thing and everyone else is delusional. You get this like coping mechanism, whereas like you have to justify your actions. You have to justify that taking steroids at such a high dose to get a very mid outcome is necessary because you have this arbitrary physique goal to get to, and this is the path and you're convinced of it. And that kind of conviction is wildly dangerous, because the amount of people who actually think this, and then the other amount of people who feed into that and think, okay, well, if he's doing it, I have to do it too, it's just not good. At the end of the day, it is a wildly genetically driven game to build the physique. A fitness influencer is somebody who has a success bias on their side. Their genetics are elite. Their genetics are something that I think a lot of people sort of idolize. And even if you're on steroids or not, taking steroids is not going to achieve you that physique. Oftentimes, the net common result is something like this guy. And that's why I say like the best case situation is that you take TRT plus, right? Whatever that is, right? 200 to 250 milligrams of testosterone or something like that, and assess your response and do it safely. Don't blow yourself up with acne. Don't try 18 million different compounds. Don't have to throw a whole pharmacy at yourself because of the side effects that you're receiving from the androgens that you're using. Just start low and slow and play your cards well and safe and avoid this catastrophe, which is just disastrous. One of the most common side effects that people tend to experience in blasting steroids like this is hair loss too. And we've actually made a product to help with this, and in specific help with the treatment of hair loss in both steroid using men and non-steroidal using men. It's called Super Follicle Fuel. It's in the link down below in the description. Use code Coachkolton to buy yourself some now with a fat discount. But truly, this stuff is very, very powerful. What we do in our product is block the receptor site at the scalp locally, so you don't have systemic effects. We also have a bunch of other things in there. You can go read the website. I won't make this a whole long spiel, but give it a try. Links down below in the description. And also, serious note, because I think this is an important one to mention, they are a sponsor of the channel, but I think it's very valuable for people who are doing steroids. Do your blood work. You need to see what's going on internally. You don't have this like imaginary dipstick to check like a vehicle does. Your dipstick is blood work. And so we have a sponsor, Anabolic Insights. You can use them or any other lab third-party provider. You can buy your labs without a doctor needed. You can see for yourself what your health metrics look like and actually make real and actionable changes. Get advice based on these laboratory markers. It's so important. You can use the Anabolic Insights link down below. Again, code Coachkolton to give you some money off on any kind of labs. Hopefully you guys don't run around blasting yourself to the nines like this, and you can save yourself a decent chunk of lifespan chasing a physique that's realistically not going to be obtainable for most people. I think actually what matters is getting lean, building a decent physique, and if you do really want to chase that fitness influencing scene, you can do so. I'm not telling you not to, but don't make this delusion come to life and blast steroids to achieve some kind of virality, because ultimately it's never going to end well. I'll catch you in the next video, folks.